Hey up everyone, and welcome back to a new video on the channel. And if you have noticed already, my camera quality has been massively improved, and that is thanks to my recent purchase of the Sony ZV-E10. So if you want to see a video on that soon, let me know and I'll make it. However, that's not what the video is about today, because it's about this. This is the GTX 660, which was launched all the way back in 2012. It comes from the same graphics card family as the previous GTX 650 Ti video, but it does support a bit more horsepower. And talking about horsepower, I'm working on a review of my RTX 3080 Founders Edition, so make sure you stay subscribed for that. However, back to the GTX 660, I had to get a custom V-BIOS to get this thing to work, as it wouldn't work properly outside of Windows Safe mode. So I thought I'd flash a brand new V-BIOS onto it, and it got it to work. However, the V-BIOS that is currently loaded onto it is a different cooler, so I had to set the fan speed manually to 65%, but this didn't lead it over 65 degrees C. Getting into the specs of the GTX 660, and it has 960 CUDA cores, 2 GB of GDDR5 memory running through a 192-bit bus. The model I have today is the EVGA blower style, I think. I'm not sure if it's a super clocked, it might be a super clocked. These things do support DirectX 12, however it's not at a feature level, so newer games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla won't even launch. Speaking of games that won't even launch, the driver support on this thing is absolutely ancient, and they cut it off a couple years back. So some newer games like F1 22 cannot be tested today, as it just flat out crashes on launch. Also, Nvidia recommend a 450 watt power supply to juice this thing up through a single PCIe 6-pin power connector. All testing today is done in my test bench system, which has a Ryzen 5 5600G, 16GB of crucial Ballistix CL16 3200 MHz memory, and a Gigabyte X570 Aorus Ultra. All games are loaded on NVMe SSDs, just to cut out some of the stutters that you can usually get with hard drives. And all testing, apart from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, is done at 1080p. And the GPU has been cleaned out prior to testing. I think I did it in a video that was on my channel a few years back. So if you missed that one, probably don't watch it actually. It's probably a pretty terrible video. However, if you want a new video on cleaning a GPU, let me know and I'll deliver that one for you too. We went for the medium settings in Fallout 4. I also disabled the volumetric God rays, as they do tend to tank a lot of the performance, and just like the 650 Ti video, we also took the benchmarking figures from around the Sanctuary and Concord area. Do be aware though, if you go downtown, the performance will tank quite a bit, but that's not because of the GTX 660, it even tanks on my RTX 3080, so yeah. And at these settings, the GTX 660 got 57 FPS on average with a 1% low of 40 FPS. This isn't bad performance at all, and Fallout is definitely playable on this GPU. Odyssey is definitely the hardest game to run today, and so much so I had to drop it down to 720p, because I did try testing at 1080p and I was like, yeah, these performance figures are not going to be the one. However, at 720p and the absolute lowest settings, we got 33 FPS on average with a 1% low of 19 FPS, and Odyssey does not like the Kepler series of GPUs, because no matter if you've got something like a 760, something like that, Odyssey doesn't like it for some reason. So you probably can play Odyssey on a GTX 660, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it. GTA 5 is a modern classic, and I'm expecting some great performance here, and spoiler alert, we do get some pretty decent performance. The VRAM warning in this game is completely bogus. It says that you don't have enough VRAM, even though you do, as we all see from the performance now. With the high preset with no MSIA, however I did enable FXAA, we've got 73 FPS on average with a 1% low of 55 FPS. The performance was incredibly smooth despite what that VRAM slider was telling us. 1.9 gig of VRAM was being used, so you was just teetering up on the edge. However, this didn't take away from the experience, because the game felt totally smooth and it looked pretty good as well. I can't quite remember the last time I tested The Witcher 3 here on the channel. However, when I do test it, I like to test in the Novigrad sort of town centre, as this is pretty much the laggiest part of the game. I set the settings to low with no Nvidia Hairworks here, and the GTX 660 got 45 FPS on average with a 1% low of 34 FPS. So yeah, it is pretty playable on a GTX 660. If you're looking for more of a cinematic experience, maybe crank them settings up to medium and you might just get away with 30 FPS here. So this was not as bad as I was expecting, as The Witcher 3 used to be a pretty hard game to run back in the day. However, the game didn't look particularly brilliant, but that was because it's on the low settings. Usually 2016 Skyrim Special Edition does perform quite a bit better than Fallout 4 for whatever reason, maybe because it's the remaster of a game from 2011. They both use the same engine and them capped to 60 FPS. Just like the 650 Ti video, I did a little ramble around Whiterun, as this does tend to stress the GPU out quite a bit, and the settings were set to the medium, and the 660 turned out an average of 57 FPS with a 1% low of 30 FPS. The stutter here was pretty bad, if I'm honest. I don't know what was causing it. It might be worth capping the frame rate to 30 FPS, yeah, I know. However, this will get rid of a lot of the stutters. Rainbow Six Siege is up next, and it's one of the easier games to run today, as I've said like a million times in previous videos. And at the medium settings, the 660 netted us 91 FPS on average with a 1% low of 53 FPS. It might be worth setting it to low if you've got a 144Hz panel, just to get closer to that refresh rate. However, medium will be fine if you've got something like a 100Hz or a 60Hz display. Rocket League is definitely the easiest game to run today, and that's because it's a very arcadey game and you can pretty much run it on a potato at this point, to be honest. We set the graphics to the quality preset, and this turned out 150 FPS on average with 52 FPS for the 1% low. Rocket League, as I've said in the past, does have quite poor 1% performance. However, it's only when you're boosting for some reason, so it's something to do with either the physics in the game or the effects when you boost, so I'm not quite sure what causes that. However, performance here, not too bad at all. Last game up today is Fortnite, and just like the 650 Ti video, we set this to the Performance API, which is incredibly clutch. This essentially sacrifices a lot of the visual fidelity in turn for, you guessed it, frame rate. And with this set to the medium preset, we got 174 FPS on average with a 1% low of 49. Fortnite is quite prevalent with its little 1% low stutters, so there's nothing out of line here. And last up today is Unigine Superposition, where on the 1080p medium preset, the GTX 660 scored 3,752. So yeah, I'll compare that to a bunch of other GPUs that I've tested in the past. Once again, I'm pretty impressed with 10-year-old aging hardware, and that's because in some modest games you can get away with quite some decent performance, such as games like GTA 5 and Fortnite, where you can get some very good looking visuals. In the case of GTA, Fortnite did look pretty garbage. However, performance in them games regardless was pretty good. And if you're playing something like that and you're on a really small budget, or maybe you even have a 660 lying around, I'd say, to be fair, if you don't really care that much about the performance and the quality slider, it might be a decent GPU. But because of its lack of full DirectX 12 support and its lack of driver support now, I can't really recommend this card in 2022, and that is just because it's got no future. It is 10 years old. However, if it did have full DirectX 12 support, I don't think it would be performing particularly great, as in Odyssey, as we saw for example, it performed pretty appalling in that game. But if you're into games like Rainbow Six Siege and esports games, the 660 might be a good bet for you. However, with all that being said, I'm going to leave the video here, so like if you like it, and let me know if you really are digging the camera performance, because I'm actually quite impressed with this little thing. So let me know if you actually like the quality of the videos now. So like this video if you like it, stay subscribed for more tech content, and I'll catch you in the next one.